The case of Amanda Collie and Lindy Dobbins. On the morning of August 27, 2015, 36-year-old Amanda Collie returned home to find her house in complete chaos. Someone had broken into her residence while she was away. Her house was in disarray, with boxes overturned, trash cans emptied, and numerous items broken or damaged, with shards of glass scattered everywhere. Amanda panicked and checked her phone, which contained many missed calls and messages from her ex-husband that she did not want to answer. At 5:30 a.m., she called her boyfriend and the police for assistance. She had recently begun dating a man named Lamar. At that time, Lamar was driving his pickup truck along a route that led to her house. Meanwhile, the police were en route to the scene. One officer arrived to evaluate the danger of the situation. He was to speak with Amanda and assess the damage to her property. The police examined the scene and departed after Amanda chose not to file an official complaint. Before the officers left her home around 9 a.m. that morning, someone came to Amanda's aid. The first visitor was Lindy Dobbins, Amanda's best friend. At 39 and a mother of 3, Lindy had taken the morning off work to be with Amanda and offer support. Lindy was a compassionate person who consistently helped others in difficult circumstances. After a while, their mutual friend Rachel Hendricks joined them. She had dropped her children off at school and decided to support Amanda since she had some free time. By that moment, Lamar had already arrived at Amanda's house. The four of them gathered at Amanda's home, observing the chaos and discussing what had transpired while contemplating their next steps. Amanda remained in shock from the incident and realized that she needed to consult a lawyer before reporting her ex-husband, whom she believed was responsible. Eventually, Amanda's ex-husband called her again. This time, she chose to answer, leading to a 14-minute conversation. While they were in the living room, they suddenly heard the sound of shattering glass. A few minutes later, a police officer stopped Lamar on the street. He was running frantically, not paying attention to where he was going, trying to flee from Amanda's house. According to him, he left the living room as soon as the shooting began, went down to the laundry room, and then escaped through the garage, which was partially open. Lamar reported that, unexpectedly, gunfire erupted at Amanda's residence. He informed the police officer that he believed the shots were fired from outside the house. He did not observe anyone inside being struck by bullets. He was unable to provide the police with specific details. Lamar was certain that the attacker was targeting him, leading him to believe that the women inside the house remained alive. The situation was critical. Minutes after Lamar left, the other women attempted to escape. Rachel ran through the living room and out the broken glass front door. She spotted the neighbor's house next door and quickly ran over to hide. After fleeing, Rachel called 911 to report that she had escaped but had injured her arm. She suspected that an armed attack had occurred at her friend's house and knew precisely who was likely responsible. Realizing the danger, Rachel instinctively ran when Lamar told them to hide. She was shocked as the gunfire continued. While speaking to the police, Rachel expressed concern for her friends and urged the authorities to arrive quickly to rescue them. In the next few minutes, 2 additional calls were received at the police station, one from Amanda and one from her friend Lindy. However, during these calls, they only screamed as gunshots echoed in the background. The police immediately proceeded to Amanda Collie's house to rescue her. Gunshot wounds to Lindy's arms and legs indicated that she had tried to defend herself from the attacker. Unfortunately, her efforts were in vain. The assailant had fired an entire magazine at her, indicating a clear intent to kill. Lindy was discovered at the end of a long corridor, lying in a pool of blood. It appeared that she had attempted to escape, but was killed before she could get away. Rachel stated that just seconds before the shooting began, she had looked toward the backyard of the house. There, along the garden path, she saw the outline of a man who then drew a weapon through the glass door. A group of people stood behind him. The glass was thin, preventing her from seeing clearly who was there. The police corroborated her account by analyzing the locations of bullet holes in the backyard. On the path, they found several unused cartridges, which were identified as deli-caliber bullets. Lamar returned to Amanda's house. When the police arrived, he felt confident that they would take control of the situation. Lamar mentioned that he had heard gunshots from the backyard and believed himself to be the perpetrator's target. At that moment, he urged everyone to run. Although he did not see the perpetrator, he suspected that the assailant was Amanda's ex-husband, who had spoken with her on the phone just minutes before the attack. Rachel explained that they did not have enough time to react as quickly as Lamar, so she and Lindy decided to hide in the pantry. She heard Amanda on the other side, probably trying to find a place to hide and possibly running toward the bathroom. Seconds later, Rachel heard the front door being broken down. At that moment, the intruder entered the house. He approached the pantry, attempted to open the door, and discovered that it was locked from the inside. The attacker wanted to know the location of Amanda's boyfriend. Rachel and Lindy replied that he was not there while continuing to hold the door. The intruder then fired through the door, striking Rachel's arm and causing her to lose her balance. Lindy's leg was now injured, causing her to scream in pain. Amanda was also injured but remained alive, screaming near the bathroom. In that brief moment, Rachel jumped up and ran from the house. According to Rachel, the attacker could have been Amanda's ex-husband, James Terry Collie. She recognized his familiar voice behind the door. A few minutes later, James' father called the police to report that his son had just confessed to him that he had caught his wife with a friend. At that point, the police arrived at the house. After the attack, James fled the scene. 9 units were deployed to track James. They followed his scent to a nearby street. During the search, a cell phone was discovered, likely left behind by James. Unfortunately, the police were unable to identify the vehicle in which he had driven away. He had disappeared from the crime scene. The area was searched using specially trained dogs and helicopters, but these efforts produced no results. Despite an extensive search lasting several hours, James remained at large, posing a threat to public safety. Fortunately, police arrested James later that evening while he was driving his sister's car. During a search of the car, police found a shotgun and 2 Delroy and PGO caliber handguns in the passenger seat, along with a large quantity of ammunition. A subsequent examination of the firearms confirmed that the bullets matched those recovered at the crime scene and in Amanda's and Lindy's bodies. Additionally, glass fragments identical to those found in Amanda's home were discovered. Following his arrest, James refused to cooperate with the investigation, claiming he could not recall anything from the time of the tragic events. Further investigation revealed that James and Amanda had been married for over 8 years and had 2 children. Their relationship later began to deteriorate, ultimately leading to their divorce. James moved to his sister's house, 20 km away from their family home, where Amanda and the children continued to live. As the divorce proceedings continued over the subsequent months, they encountered many difficulties regarding child custody and property division. The two eventually decided to begin new chapters in their lives. James started dating a co-worker named Emmy, while Amanda pursued a relationship with Lamar, another co-worker from the sporting goods company. Even though their marriage had completely collapsed, James remained possessive of his ex-wife Amanda. He suspected that she was seeing someone new and called her several times to determine who it was. Amanda did not disclose the truth because she feared it would lead to serious consequences. As a result, James grew increasingly angry and aggressive. He called her frequently, becoming so intrusive that Amanda felt compelled to seek a restraining order through the court to protect herself. The weekend before the attack, Amanda's neighbor and close friend took a photograph of a man mowing the lawn in front of Amanda's house. The man was identified as her new boyfriend, Lamar. When James discovered this, he attempted to contact Amanda, insulting her and demanding to know the identity of the man she was seeing. Amanda lied, claiming that the man in the photo was merely a landscaper. James became enraged because Amanda had found someone new. Early on the morning of August 27th, he planned a horrific act. Surveillance cameras from nearby homes did not capture the moment James, her ex-husband, entered Amanda's house. This was not surprising, since he had lived there for a long time and was familiar with the areas not covered by the cameras. He approached the house undetected from the backyard, just as he had intended. James entered the house around 3 a.m., but found it empty. Frustrated, he began creating chaos, tossing items around and emptying the trash bins from the kitchen. He broke the TV and damaged several expensive appliances. This destruction appeared aimed at upsetting Amanda. As he caused this damage, he was also preparing for the terrible actions that were to follow. James was searching for evidence that Amanda was involved with another man. Eventually, he discovered something that confirmed his suspicions and made him even angrier. At 4 a.m., he went to Mike's house, who lived across the street. James knocked loudly, shouted, and swore, speaking about Amanda in an angry tone. Mike showed James everything he had found in Amanda's house, including some intimate toys that James had never seen before with his ex-wife. Mike knew that James had been given a restraining order prohibiting him from accessing his home or contacting his ex-wife. However, James had violated the order. This could have resulted in a court hearing and possible arrest. Mike tried to calm James by offering him a drink and suggesting that he go home and rest to avoid making further impulsive decisions. Unfortunately, James ignored this advice and decided to go to court to address the issues related to his first restraining order violation. On the way, he called his father to tell him about the damage he had caused at Amanda's home. His father reprimanded him and urged him not to act foolishly again. James was arrested and charged with 2 counts of premeditated murder, 2 counts of attempted murder, robbery, and aggravated stalking for violating a court order. James maintained his innocence, claiming amnesia, and was taken to the county jail to await a hearing. The prosecution needed to prove that James attacked Amanda, her friends, and Lamar. Although there was no direct evidence linking him to the crimes, multiple witnesses were present who confirmed that he was the perpetrator. Police reconstructed James' movements on the day of the attack. James arrived at Mike's house around 4 a.m. and stayed until 4:45 a.m. After leaving, he went to his sister's house, where he lived with his sister and father, approximately 15 minutes from his former home. After returning to his sister's house, he retrieved a gun and ammunition before committing the crime. Prosecutors allege that the motive for the attack was a photograph he had taken of Lamar at Amanda's house. Police examined James' cell phone and computer and learned that at approximately 5 a.m., he began texting Amanda. He had attempted to call her just 1 minute before the first gunshots and had called Amanda 22 times prior to that. Up until that point, Amanda had avoided answering his calls. After seeing the state of her house, she decided to answer the phone. During the call, she accused James of robbing and vandalizing her home. Amanda asked James to leave her alone. It was evident that she had done everything possible to avoid contact with him. She even suggested that she would remain silent about the vandalism if he would finally leave her life. The defense team is determined to challenge the charges. They argue that James had been prescribed medication to treat anxiety and depression, which was intended to help him but, when combined, caused unpredictable side effects. This reaction was exacerbated the night before the attack, particularly after he had consumed beer and strong alcoholic drinks. On the evening of August 26th, after returning home, he took another medication that was intended to help him sleep. He fell asleep but awoke a few hours later. The defense argued that the combination of the drugs he had taken, along with the alcohol, contributed to his uncontrollable behavior. However, James had ample time before the incident. The effects of these substances should have worn off, and he even attended the trial that morning without arousing any suspicion. After leaving the courthouse, he began calling and texting Amanda. Before arriving at his ex-wife's house, he filled his car with gas. The prosecutor's office believes this indicated that he was preparing to flee the state, suggesting that he had planned ahead. During a search of the car, police discovered a shotgun, 2 handguns, and a large quantity of ammunition of various calibers. These items were scattered throughout the vehicle, suggesting that they had been hastily discarded. Police also found the same drugs mentioned by the defense. Attorneys prepared expert witnesses in pharmacology and psychiatry to demonstrate that the combination of drugs James was taking could impair his capacity to think rationally and make decisions. According to the attorneys, this impairment ruled out premeditated intent, suggesting that James's actions could have been a spontaneous outburst of aggression beyond his control. The pharmacologist stated that the combination of these drugs was likely to cause amnesia. Therefore, James might not actually remember the incident. During police questioning, Mike provided detailed evidence of James visiting his house that morning. James had been acting somewhat strangely. Mike understood that James was struggling to cope with Amanda's new relationship after their divorce. Mike could not comprehend why James still wanted to possess her even after their separation. James became obsessed and sent pictures of Amanda's new boyfriend to her, which contributed to the tragic outcome. Police carefully examined text messages exchanged between James and Mike, which appeared to corroborate Mike's account. James harbored resentment not only toward his ex-wife, but also toward her friends. He specifically blamed Amanda's best friend, Lindy, for turning Amanda against him, which fueled his hatred for her. Evidence indicated that James had collected a weapon just before leaving the house, according to the prosecutor's office. Police also noted that James' father had attempted to intervene and prevent him from doing so, but his efforts were unsuccessful. The key defense witness was James' sister, Rhonda, who lived with him at the time. However, she was on vacation in Italy during the attack and returned 2 weeks later. Rhonda disputed the prosecutor's claim that James had been planning the attack. She contended that the 2 guns found in the car were there by chance, as she had been carrying them for some time. The defense argued that this suggested the attack was impulsive and unintentional. In contrast, the prosecution believed Rhonda was merely attempting to protect her younger brother, with whom she had always shared a close relationship. The prosecution highlighted inconsistencies in Rhonda's testimony, particularly regarding the type of handgun she reported having in the car, which raised the jury's suspicions. James faced the possibility of the death penalty for the assault. James' defense team aimed to reduce the severity of his sentence. The only certain way to spare his life was to challenge the premeditated murder charges, which could have carried a sentence of life imprisonment without parole. However, the prosecution was determined not to negotiate and refused to offer a plea deal. They argued that James, who had taken 2 lives and seriously injured 2 others, deserved the death penalty. The defense contended that James had no intention of harming Amanda or her friends. Nevertheless, when he arrived at Amanda's home, an incident occurred that provoked him. It is believed that an argument between the men may have caused James to begin shooting. However, surviving witnesses, Rachel and Lamar, stated that no conversation had occurred and that no one provoked him. On the other hand, the prosecution argued strongly that James did not arrive at the home by accident. Instead, he had returned to his sister's house to retrieve weapons and ammunition for the murders, suggesting that his actions were premeditated. The key piece of evidence in the case was a phone call between James and Amanda that took place shortly before the shooting began. This call, which lasted 14 minutes, was played to the jury in court. During the conversation, Amanda attempted to end her relationship with James. She cried and pleaded with him, trying to intimidate him by referencing the restraining order and threatening to call the police if he continued to stalk her. It was clear that she had endured his harassment for an extended period, but he paid no attention to her suffering. After both sides presented their arguments, the jury began deliberating their verdict. 2 hours later, they reached a unanimous decision, finding James Terry Collie, 38, guilty on all 7 counts, including burglary. However, the case was not over. 2 weeks later, the same jury reconvened to decide whether James should receive the death penalty. The defense team remained hopeful. They aimed to prove that the combination of drugs he had been taking could have caused side effects, such as memory loss. Experts, including a forensic psychiatrist and a pharmacist, supported this claim, asserting that James suffered from parasomnias, which meant he could not have been aware of and could not remember the events that had occurred. Psychiatrists explained that people with parasomnias can walk, drive, and perform deliberate actions. However, the prosecutor's office disputed these claims by presenting court records, showing that James had attended court the morning before the attack. He had interacted with multiple people and displayed no unusual behavior. James appeared calm, showing no signs of slowing down, confusion, or depression, which are common indicators of parasomnias. The prosecution successfully convinced the jury of James's guilt in causing the deaths of Amanda and Lindy. The jury unanimously decided that he should receive the death penalty. A third hearing then took place, during which the court gave the defense one last opportunity to present compelling evidence that might reduce the death sentence. During this hearing, James took the stand for the first time, describing the incident as a terrible accident. However, his account lacked credibility. The defense attorneys also failed to present any substantial evidence, leading to James Terry Collie's death sentence being upheld. He is currently in prison awaiting execution by lethal injection. Moving on to the next case. The case of Amy Leann Hall. The story of Amy Leann Hall is a heartbreaking tragedy arising from a sequence of events that transformed a devoted mother and respected community member into someone responsible for an unimaginable act. These pressures ultimately culminated in a devastating incident on November 1, 2018, shocking her family and community. This article explores the life of Amy Leann Hall, the circumstances that led to the tragedy, its aftermath, and raises questions surrounding mental health, family relationships, and the justice system. Amy Leann Hall was born on March 12, 1985, in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. From an early age, she showed a strong desire to help others and make positive contributions to her community. Throughout the years, she assumed various roles that enabled her to form lasting relationships. Through her work, Amy launched several programs focused on empowering disadvantaged individuals and supporting youth development. With her dedication, determination, and clear vision, she became an inspiration and role model for many. Amy was married to Renato Tolliver, and together they had 3 children. Their eldest child, Kaysen Tolliver, was born on August 14, 2000, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Kaysen was a senior at Beggs High School, where he performed well academically and served as the quarterback of the football team. After graduating high school, he planned to attend college to major in architecture, later become a firefighter, and continue playing football. Outside of sports, he enjoyed fishing and swimming. Chloe Tolliver, the second child of Amy and Gennaro, was born on June 7, 2002, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. At the time, she was a junior at Beggs High School and aspired to become an obstetrician-gynecologist, motivated by her strong love for children. Along with her interest in learning, she enjoyed makeup, shopping, and nail care. Chloe shared an especially close bond with her youngest sister, Nicole, and the two frequently shared their hobbies and happiness together. In 2016, Amy and Renato separated and became involved in a bitter custody dispute that lasted 2 years. In May 2016, Amy filed a petition for a protective order, alleging that Renato had threatened to kill her and engaged in abusive behavior. These allegations were later determined to be unsubstantiated. By June 2016, in divorce and custody filings, Renato sought custody of the children, accusing Amy of emotionally abusing them and using protective orders as a tool against him. He also claimed that Amy had been diagnosed with mental health issues, further intensifying tensions between them. 2 years later, on November 1, 2018, a tragic crime occurred within Amy Hall's family. Early that morning, Amy entered Kaysen's bedroom and struck him on the head while he was sleeping. Tragically, he died at the scene. She then went into the bedroom of her 2 daughters, Chloe and Nicole, and attacked both on their heads. Nicole, although suffering injuries to her head and neck, survived. She managed to escape into a bathroom and convinced her mother to surrender the weapon. Chloe, however, sustained critical injuries. Despite being transported to the hospital for treatment, she never regained consciousness and was pronounced dead 4 days later. Police were called to the scene at approximately 6:30 a.m. by a friend of Kaysen's who had been staying overnight. A deputy from the Okmulgee County Sheriff's Office arrived first and found Amy attempting to flee in her car. A high-speed chase followed, reaching speeds exceeding 110 miles per hour, before police eventually stopped her vehicle and arrested her. Immediately after her arrest, Amy was taken to the police station for questioning. During her first questioning, Amy told authorities that she did not understand why she had assaulted her children. Later, she asserted that she thought she was safeguarding them from her former husband, Renato, whom she alleged had abused them and committed other serious offenses during their bitter divorce. Amy said that a part of her believed the act was required to save her children from the danger she thought Renato posed. Amy also acknowledged to police that her initial plan was to kill her children and then take her own life. However, her youngest daughter, Nicole, intervened by seizing the weapon from her hand, preventing her from following through with the plan. Ultimately, Amy admitted to her crimes and showed deep regret, saying that she was extremely sorry for what had occurred. On November 28, 2022, Amy pleaded guilty to 2 counts of murder and 1 count of assault with intent to kill. As part of the plea deal, Amy acknowledged that on November 1, 2018, she had attacked and killed her 18-year-old son, Kaysen, and her 16-year-old daughter, Chloe. She also admitted to using a weapon with the intent to kill her then 14-year-old daughter, Nicole. Prosecutors stated that if Amy had not accepted the plea agreement and agreed to a life sentence, they would have dropped the federal case against her so that state prosecutors could move forward and seek the death penalty. Oklahoma U.S. District Court Judge Ronald A. White sentenced Amy Leann Hall, age 43, to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the murders of Kaysen and Chloe. In addition, she was given a 20-year prison sentence for assaulting her youngest daughter, Nicole, who survived the attack. All 3 sentences will run concurrently, meaning they will be served at the same time. Amy will remain in the custody of the U.S. Marshal Service until she is transferred to a facility run by the Federal Bureau of Prisons, where she will serve her life sentence without parole. The motive behind the incident remains under investigation, but police revealed that they had been called to Amy's home multiple times in the past because of family problems, although no arrests were made during those incidents. Additionally, Amy had pleaded guilty to petty theft in 2014, raising more questions about the circumstances that led up to this tragedy. After the trial, U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Oklahoma, Christopher J. Wilson, said that Amy's horrific violence against her children was unimaginable and nothing could ever make things right. He also stated that justice requires careful consideration of all the facts, including the interests of the surviving victim, Nicole. Based on these factors, the United States recommended that a life sentence be imposed in this case. The case of Amy Leann Hall stands as a reminder of the complexities of divorce, which can result in devastating outcomes. As Amy begins her life sentence, there is hope that the surviving family members, especially Nicole, will find comfort and support to cope with this profound loss. It is essential for the community to become more aware of the importance of early intervention and support for individuals dealing with mental health and family issues to help prevent similar tragedies in the future. Moving on to the next case. The case of Andres Mendoza. On May 14, 2021, 34-year-old Reina Amador went missing. She was last seen north of Atizapán de Zaragoza in the state of Mexico. Before her disappearance, she had informed her husband, Bruno, that she was going to Zocalo Square in the historic center to buy mobile phone parts. She was accompanied by a family friend, Andres Mendoza, a 74-year-old man whom she had known for many years. When Bruno returned home at 8 p.m., Reina had not yet come back, and only 2 of their daughters were at home. He tried calling her, but she did not answer. At 11 p.m., Bruno went to Andres's house to inquire about her, but Andres claimed he had no information about Reina and had not seen her all day. As a former police chief, Bruno immediately decided to report his wife missing and went to the police station to file a report. No one anticipated that this case would become one of the most notorious and tragic in Mexico. On Saturday, May 15th, Bruno requested to see security camera footage. The recording showed his wife, Reina, walking down the street where Andres lived, but she never left Andres's house. This was the last time she was seen at 8:40 p.m. Bruno returned to Andres's house, accompanied by his brother-in-law. They knocked on the door, but Andres insisted he knew nothing about Reina. Bruno asked him to open the door to ask a few questions. Andres opened the door slightly, and then Bruno forced his way inside. Andres told him that he would not find anything there, but Bruno sensed that something was wrong. The lights were off, and everything in the house seemed normal at first. However, Bruno discovered cardboard boxes in Andres's room. His intuition told him to move the boxes, and beneath them was an entrance to the basement. There, he was shocked to find body parts in several buckets. On the dining table, there were also remains, including a face and scalp separated from the skull. Upon closer inspection, Bruno found Reina's belongings and realized that the remains were hers. As this was happening, Andres attempted to escape. He rushed out of the house, but was quickly apprehended, prompting Bruno to call the police. 2 police squads, stationed nearby, quickly arrived at the scene. Confused neighbors, not understanding why Andres was being handcuffed, tried to intervene. Officers brought him back inside and seated him on a chair. Bruno questioned Andres about his actions. One police officer contacted the prosecutor's office, as a search warrant was necessary. During the investigation, a dismembered body was discovered, and authorities suspected there might be more victims. This incident quickly became a hot topic nationwide. Friends and acquaintances of Andres were shocked. They insisted he was a calm and peaceful individual, even serving as president of his neighborhood civil council. When police executed a search warrant at Andres's home, they involved specialists from various fields, including criminologists, anthropologists, doctors, and forensic experts. They focused on the room with access to the basement. In addition to the bed, there were other items in the room, such as clothes, a wardrobe, and a few photographs. When police descended into the basement, they discovered the dismembered body of a woman, with her feet resting on a chair. Nearby, they found knives, a saw, and a machete. On a table, there were severed limbs and a pool of blood. Additionally, plastic containers held body parts and organs, with some preserved in salt. The remains of a face and scalp with the hair removed were also found in the basement. Initially, investigators believed there was only one victim, but they uncovered additional evidence, including 12 cell phones, 12 SIM cards, cosmetics, women's clothing, wallets, shoes, necklaces, and various other women's accessories. Several videotapes and multiple notebooks with gruesome notes were discovered, including lists of women. In addition, police recovered 9 sets of keys, 2 scales, election documents, and more than a dozen photos of the victims. The most alarming discovery was the well-preserved faces and scalps with hair removed. This evidence led police to suspect they were dealing with a serial killer. Andres was then taken to Barrientos prison, where he was held prior to his trial. He expressed a desire to tell the truth and confessed to killing Reina. She worked at a cell phone store just a short distance from Andres's house. He often visited her at work and assisted her, leading many neighbors to believe they were related, with some even spreading rumors that he was her uncle. On the day she disappeared, they had arranged to meet and purchase supplies for Reina's business, as they had done previously, which earned her trust. At 5 o'clock in the morning, she told her husband Bruno that she was going shopping with Andres. According to Andres's testimony, Reina came to his house, and they began to argue. He stated that he loved her and asked her to have sex with him, which led to an argument. When she refused, he took a knife and cut her neck. After she fell to the floor, he began to beat her. Although she was still alive, he stabbed her in the chest multiple times. After killing her, he dismembered her body and placed it in boxes to move to the basement. In the basement, he removed the face from the skull, stating it was so beautiful that he wanted to keep it forever. He soaked the remains in salt to prevent flies from appearing. This is something he admitted. He also claimed he buried 4 other women in the basement. However, notes in his notebook and photographs indicated otherwise. One of Andres's handwritten notes, dated December 17, 1974, described one of his victims who lived on Colonia Hank Gonzalez Street in Ecatepec. According to the note, she passed away at 5 a.m. The note detailed the weights of various body parts. The head weighed 4.5 kilograms, the chest 1.5 kilograms, each rib and the right arm 14 kilograms, and the pancreas, liver, and heart weighed 4 kilograms. This victim was 28 years old. The gruesome details left a deep impression on investigators, who had no idea how significant the case would become. Additionally, at the crime scene, police discovered a videotape filmed by Andres, recording each murder. Many could not comprehend his mindset. For numerous investigators, this case was the most horrifying they had ever encountered. The developments in the incident were unbelievable, like a horror movie. A few days later, police began dismantling the foundation of the building to determine if there were indeed graves in the basement. Civilian experts joined the police to assist with excavation, continuing to search for remains and related evidence. Excavation initially began in the backyard near the kitchen, where numerous bones were discovered. Digging then continued in the main room, measuring 30 square meters, believed to be the entrance to the basement. During this process, several skulls and bones were found. A report indicated the discovery of 1,137 bone fragments belonging to at least 4 individuals. The investigation continues daily, with experts surprised by the new findings. During this time, Andres confessed to occasionally consuming parts of his victims' bodies. This has led to rumors that he engaged in cannibalism, alarming neighbors. They recalled that Andres had previously sold meat, which explained how he was able to meticulously cut up the bodies of his victims. Neighbors said that after the butcher shop closed, Andres would occasionally go from house to house in the area selling meat, allegedly sourced from Iztapalapa. They began to suspect that he was lying and was actually selling the meat of his victims. They noted that he sold this meat at unusually low prices and often gave them more meat than they had asked for. Andres was born in Oaxaca on November 29, 1947. Neighbors recalled that he moved to Atizapán in the 1980s. He lived in the same house as his sister, who asked him to collect rent from the tenants. He was known for being calm and reserved. 9 years before the investigation began, he opened a butcher shop, which allowed him to meet many people, including politicians. He served as the president of the Civil Council of Atizapán and was a member of a political party. He was generous and caring toward the residents of the area. He often visited people's homes to understand their needs. Neighbors viewed him as a role model, and no one suspected him. There was another perspective to consider. Some people described Andres as depraved and having an unpleasant appearance. He frequently visited women's homes, saying he wanted to help them, but often had more intimate intentions. He was known as an older man who spent time in bars, drinking and socializing with women. In the building where he lived, one room was rented to a couple with a small child and another to a doctor. None of them noticed anything suspicious about him. Among the documents found in the building was a file for Norma Jimenez, who had been missing since August 6, 2011. She had light brown skin, a healthy figure, wide hips, a bruise on her right cheek, and a vertical scar on her abdomen from surgery. She was 39 years old when she went missing. On the day Norma disappeared, she went to work as usual in Bergen from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. At around 10:15 p.m., she called her family to say she was on her way home. Unfortunately, she never returned home. The reason was that Andres invited her to his house, promising a good payment. Instead, he stabbed her in the heart, dismembered her body, and buried the remains in his backyard. Another of his victims was a 20-year-old woman who worked at the Marina bar. She was similar in appearance to Norma and was also short. She was last seen leaving her home on April 7, 2012. Andres stated that in the same year, he met two girls named Adrenaline and Gardena, who also worked at the Bergen bar. He confessed that he took them to his home, and when they refused to have sex with him, he killed them and buried their bodies in the basement. In 2016, Flor Vizcaino, a 38-year-old woman, left her home and never returned. She disappeared on October 16th, and since then, there has been no information about her. It was only when police searched Andres's home that they found her documents. Flor was a mother of two teenage daughters and worked as a waitress. She was divorced, and her daughters were staying with their father that weekend. She left home at 11 a.m. and sent messages to her daughters on Facebook that same day. As hours passed without her return, her family reported her missing. Flor's portraits were posted on social media, but nothing resulted from that. At work, she met Andres, who often invited her to lunch and gave her gifts. However, she refused to start a relationship with him, which is believed to be the reason he killed her. At Andres's home, documents belonging to Rubashili Gagos, 32, were also found. She went missing on July 20, 2019, and was last seen at a restaurant, a moment captured on a security camera. She had a 5-year-old son and worked at a bank. In her free time, she also worked as a delivery person for Uber Eats. That day, despite having the day off, she chose to make deliveries to earn extra money. Her family became concerned when she did not meet her older sister at the airport as planned. When her sister went to her apartment, she found only her son, who had been left alone for 5 days in a locked apartment. A missing person report for Rubashili was filed on July 27th. Her motorcycle was later found in the Shang Avier area, but there were no signs that she had been there. Andres chose attractive women as his targets. If they rejected him, he would lure them to his home, claiming he wanted to help them. When they arrived, he would gain their trust first, then secretly pull out a knife and stab them in the heart and neck. Once they stopped moving, he would dismember them. Because the women were beautiful, he removed their faces and scalps to keep them. He also cut up parts of their bodies to consume later, using his skills as a butcher. The remaining parts were soaked in salt and buried in various locations around his house, such as the kitchen, backyard, or basement. He covered the graves with a thick layer of cement to mask the smell. After weeks of investigation, the police discovered 3,787 skeletons. Forensic experts determined the skeletons belonged to at least 17 people. Authorities then began reviewing 600 folders related to missing persons cases from Oaxaca and nearby areas over the last 31 years. The skeletons underwent a thorough cleaning process, after which investigators could determine which parts of the body they belonged to, allowing an approximate number of victims to be established. While the investigation continued, Andres was transferred from Barrientos prison to Gudalbea prison due to threats from other inmates who wanted to kill him for his crimes. Several days later, relatives of one of the missing women provided DNA samples to compare with the remains found. On December 2, 2017, March Duranta, 33, left her home a few blocks from Andres's house at 8 a.m. She went to a bank branch to make transfers and took public transportation to the El Campanario area. That day, her eldest son, aged 15, called her twice, and she answered both calls, also giving her location. Afterwards, she stopped responding. Hours later, when she did not return home, her husband and 3 children reported her disappearance to the police. Since that day, they have had no information. Marta had met Andres a few months earlier when he offered her a job as a cleaner at the Civic Council office. When her family learned of her disappearance, they feared the worst, believing she had fallen victim to Andres. Among Andres's victims were Maria Maras and her 7-year-old son, Edgar, who went missing on December 24, 2014. Neighbors had not seen them since. Her sister, Matilda, explained that Maria was a single mother selling candy from a cart with her son. Andres had offered to let her keep the cart at his house. The day Maria and Edgar disappeared, they left home, telling their family they would not be gone far. Hours later, the family began searching for them in the streets. The family gathered information from local residents, and only one person reported seeing them on the day of their disappearance, Andres. He even offered to accompany Matilda to the police to report Maria and Edgar missing. A neighbor who ran a grocery store recalled that years earlier, Andres had offered her tickets to a local festival and tried to convince her to go. Another neighbor remembered that Andres promised to buy her a cell phone if she visited him, but she declined. In total, 4,300 skeletons were found, including 18 women and 1 child. This figure was released after the completion of excavations at the crime scene. These skeletons allowed investigators to identify 19 victims. Experts conducted extraction, purification, quantitative assessments, and genetic typing to create profiles for the victims. This genetic material was compared with DNA samples from at least 11 families. The analysis resulted in matches for 6 cases, confirming at least 6 victims, while 13 other victims still await identification. Investigations continue, and police are searching another house owned by Andres for additional victims. On March 18, 2022, Andres Mendoza was sentenced to life in prison. In Reina Amador's case, he was also ordered to pay more than $1.5 million in compensation to her family. Although 19 victims' remains have been found, it is believed there may be more, as Andres claimed to have killed at least 30 women. It is important to remember that serial killers often act normally, so as not to arouse suspicion. They can easily gain people's trust, are often well-liked, and hide their true nature behind a friendly facade. Stay vigilant. Moving on to the next case. The case of Angel Sawyer. Milton Sawyer was born in 1963 in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, where he spent his entire life. He grew up as a typical child, playing in the woods and building small shelters. However, he developed a strong interest in collecting valuable and rare objects, a characteristic he inherited from his father. This passion for collecting eventually led him to open an antique store as an adult. Known as a treasure hunter, he bought and resold jewelry and other items, which helped him live a comfortable life. He had a talent for discovering rare valuables. Despite this success, Milton's personal life was not as stable. He married in 2000 and had 3 children, but his marriage did not endure. The couple eventually divorced. After the separation, he dedicated all his affection to his children. He frequently took them with him everywhere, both during work and in his free time. He was widely known as a father who loved his children deeply. For many years, he remained single and showed little interest in dating until 2011, when he met Angel Kiesinger, a 28-year-old woman, while dropping his child off at school. They began talking, even though at that time Angel was married and had 4 children. Angel assured Milton that she was in the process of divorcing her husband. Although he was 10 years older than her, they connected through their shared experiences of raising multiple children in failed marriages. Milton had already resolved custody arrangements, with his children alternating between him and their mother, while Angel was just beginning to organize shared custody. After their initial meeting, their relationship grew closer. By 2012, they were married. Angel quickly became involved in Milton's business, and when she first visited his antique shop, she noticed that the shelves were disorganized. She thoughtfully rearranged the items throughout the store. Milton loved the changes. He observed that the shop looked better, and sales improved after the rearrangement. However, the family's main responsibility was not only organizing the antique shop. Together, they had 7 children, and they needed to learn how to coexist as a blended family. They managed well until August 2, 2018, when a mysterious attacker took the life of Milton, the city's most well-known antique collector. At 2 a.m., Angel knocked on her neighbor's door, appearing extremely shaken. She told the neighbor that an intruder had broken into her home and killed her husband, Milton. She said she had been tied up and was unable to call for help on her own. The neighbor immediately called emergency services by dialing 911. She told the dispatcher that Angel was crying and claimed that Milton had been murdered. There was blood on Angel's face, and she said the attacker had a gun. She also stated that the intruder had tried to steal money and jewelry, but Angel managed to escape. While waiting for police to arrive, the neighbor stayed with Angel. When law enforcement officers reached the house, they found the front door locked, but noticed that the back door was open. They entered through the back door and went to the bedroom, where Angel said Milton had been injured. Inside, the room was completely disordered. Cabinet contents were scattered across the floor, and a large amount of gold and silver jewelry was spread everywhere. The disorder made it difficult for the responding officers to locate Milton immediately. After some time, Milton was found in the bathroom. He was a large man, occupying most of the floor, and showed no signs of life. Doctors pronounced him dead. However, further investigation left police unable to immediately determine the cause of death. Milton's hands were taped behind his back, and he was lying face down in a small pool of blood. Officers quickly noticed that there was very little blood, indicating that he had not suffered severe injuries. Only minor wounds were present on his body, none of which were life-threatening. To determine what caused Milton's death, a thorough examination of both his body and the crime scene was required. Meanwhile, Angel was taken to a medical facility for treatment, with police remaining nearby for her protection, as there was concern that the attacker might return. Milton's family was notified of the incident at approximately 3 o'clock in the morning. They were stunned by the news and could not understand how Milton, who was always kind, could have had any enemies. At the crime scene, police found indications of a robbery. All the drawers of the furniture had been pulled out, and belongings were spread across the floor. Milton had no injuries to his head, and no shell casings were discovered. The position of his body suggested there had been a struggle, and in such circumstances, an attacker would normally leave behind DNA. Forensic specialists searched carefully for any evidence, including fingerprints. After performing an autopsy, forensic experts determined that Milton most likely died from asphyxiation. The position of his body, with his hands bound behind his back and pressure from a hard surface against his chest, made it difficult for him to breathe. If he had been unconscious, that position could have caused his death. During the investigation, police questioned neighbors but were unable to obtain any meaningful information. Residents reported hearing a loud noise followed by silence. Detectives found no physical evidence at the scene. They noticed that a key was still in the lock of the back door, which was unusual because keys are typically kept in a secure place. However, Angel explained that she had left the key outside on the porch so her children could use it if she came home late. It was possible that the intruder found the key and used it to enter. Detectives collected the key as evidence, since it could contain the killer's fingerprints. Angel suffered a minor injury on the right side of her forehead, which was not serious. She stated that on the night of the incident, only she and Milton were home, while their 2 children were staying with friends. Around midnight, she went into the kitchen to get a snack. When she opened the bedroom door, she saw a man dressed in black standing in the hallway. He approached her and demanded to know where the valuable jewelry was, saying he knew there was a large amount kept in the house. She believed the crime was targeted, since her husband Milton was known as the city's top gold jewelry dealer. After taking the valuables, the intruder struck her on the head, leaving her dazed. She fell, disoriented and unsure of how to react. He then took advantage of her condition and bound her hands and feet with tape. Several hours passed, but Milton never came out of the bathroom. She could not see what was happening with him. After some time, she managed to loosen the tape, free herself, and stand up. She immediately ran to a neighbor's house to ask for help. She also told detectives about a suspicious individual. Around 7 p.m. that evening, a young man had come to sell a television. However, Milton, being an experienced antique dealer, suspected the TV was stolen and refused to buy it. The young man became upset and left, possibly holding a grudge against Milton. Angel recognized the man and said his name was Dylan. He had arrived with his girlfriend, and Milton had done business with him several times before. She suspected that Dylan and his girlfriend were involved in drug use. She gave detectives a detailed description of both individuals. However, as investigators searched for Dylan and his girlfriend, they began to notice several strange aspects of the case. They reviewed surveillance footage from cameras near the home and found no suspicious individuals approaching the property. Oddly, a large amount of money and jewelry had been left behind, including items that were clearly visible. This behavior was unusual for a robbery, as thieves typically take everything they can, especially when they know valuable items are present. The selective nature of the theft suggested that either no outsiders had entered the house or that the motive behind the crime was not simply financial. Dylan and his girlfriend were later arrested and charged with trafficking illegal substances. During questioning, detectives pressed Dylan and his girlfriend about the attack on Milton, but they appeared confused and did not seem to understand what was being discussed. They seemed genuinely surprised. Investigators then directly told them that they were suspected of killing Milton, but they provided an alibi, stating that they had been selling TVs that evening. They confirmed that they had met the buyer during that time. However, this did not connect them to the subsequent tragic incident. According to them, they had sold the TV to someone else and even immediately handed over their mobile phone so police could verify their account. After checking the geolocation on the phone, investigators confirmed that Dylan and his girlfriend were indeed in a different area at the time of the attack. Around midnight, they were far from the crime scene, confirming their alibi. With this, all suspicions against them were removed. Detectives returned to the beginning of the investigation, still unable to determine who had attacked Milton. However, the following day, new information arrived from the forensic expert. The specialist reviewed the case carefully, consulted with colleagues, and concluded that the initial assumption of positional asphyxia was incorrect. Milton could not have suffocated under his own weight. It was evident that he had been intentionally strangled. A fractured rib cage discovered during the investigation supported the forensic expert's conclusion. However, this evidence conflicted with Angel's testimony, raising many questions and doubts. Police conducted a thorough investigation into Angel and Milton's marriage and found that it was not as perfect as it appeared. Conversations with Angel's friends and family did not indicate any wrongdoing, as they described the couple as having a long and seemingly happy marriage. No one believed Angel had a motive for the attack. Yet some of Milton's relatives described Angel as a very selfish woman. She was attractive and charismatic, but always considered herself superior to others. This attitude had drawn Milton, who admired her confidence. He was willing to give her expensive jewelry from his antique shop, buy her cars, and cater to her every whim. Milton's brother, David, informed detectives that after 5 years of marriage, Angel's demands began to escalate. Angel increasingly showed no appreciation for the gifts and luxuries Milton provided. Milton felt confused and had discussed with David the possibility that his wife might be unfaithful. In late 2017, suspicions arose when Angel was involved in an accident. Although she sustained only minor injuries, she reported shoulder and hip pain and visited a local physical therapy clinic, where a 38-year-old doctor, Isaac Melcher, prescribed daily exercises. At first, she attended her appointments in regular clothing, but after a few sessions, her behavior changed dramatically. She began taking great care in her appearance, showering thoroughly before each visit, wearing expensive perfume, dressing in her finest clothes, and applying makeup. This change led Milton to suspect that she was preparing for a date with Isaac. He attempted to confront Angel about her unusual behavior, but she consistently denied any wrongdoing, insisting that she always dressed nicely because she wanted to look her best in all situations. Milton's suspicions grew. He was a sensitive and religious man who valued family, honesty, and trust. Dr. Isaac appeared similar, attending church regularly and being regarded as a devoted husband and father of 3. Those who knew him vouched for his character. When police approached Isaac about new details in the case, he revealed that Milton had been visiting the clinic frequently and had argued with him several times regarding Angel. Milton was an extremely jealous husband who often raised his voice during phone calls. Although Isaac denied having an affair with Angel, police requested access to his cell phone for their investigation. He claimed an unbelievable story, that his phone had fallen into water just before the robbery at Milton's house, forcing him to dispose of it. After Milton's murder, Isaac bought a new phone at Walmart. This behavior made detectives suspicious, as they did not believe it was a coincidence. Investigators suspected that Isaac had an affair with Angel and then replaced his phone shortly after Milton's death. They believed the missing phone might contain crucial evidence linking Isaac to the murder. Furthermore, Losing the phone made it difficult to verify his whereabouts at the time of the crime. Isaac likely did not realize that police could verify their assumptions by checking Angel's mobile phone. When she was brought in for questioning, she stated that her husband Milton was extremely jealous. She explained that she always dressed elegantly and wore jewelry to enhance her appearance, which attracted attention from many men. However, she insisted that Milton overreacted and maintained that she had done nothing inappropriate. She also denied any involvement in the crime. After the questioning, officers found no grounds to hold her, so she was released. Investigators then reviewed Isaac's alibi, which claimed he was at Walmart purchasing a new cell phone at the time of the murder. However, CCTV footage from the store showed no sign of him, and there was no receipt to confirm the purchase. At this point, investigators believed they had sufficient reason to search Isaac's house. They obtained a search warrant on August 8th and found his wife at home. She informed them that Isaac had moved out of state and that she was unaware of any relationship between him and Angel. Furthermore, she could not confirm his whereabouts on the night of the murder. She knew he was not at home, but could not verify if he had gone to the store. She mentioned that he had traveled to visit his mother, which raised further suspicion that he might have anticipated trouble and fled. Although Isaac was absent, police searched his home but found no useful information or evidence. Investigators then contacted Angel to determine Isaac's location. She said that he had reached out to her through social media, claiming he was simply asking about her. Detectives requested her phone to verify, but she appeared reluctant to comply, raising further concerns. If she was willing to discuss her communication with Isaac, why was she hesitant to show the details? Upon examining her phone, detectives immediately found a conversation with someone named Dustin, which they recognized as Isaac's middle name. In the messages, he referred to Angel as "my beloved," indicating a romantic relationship. The police returned the phone to Angel, and at that moment, she received a new message. She refused to reveal its contents and, in front of the officers, deleted it. Any suspicion of her involvement in the crime became more pronounced. Investigators shifted their focus to understanding and proving her role in the attack. To continue the investigation, detectives seized her phone. 10 days into the investigation, police received crucial information from a man named Lewis, who identified himself as Isaac's mentor. Lewis explained that from the first time Angel came to see Isaac, she showed interest in him and appeared to flirt. He stated that Isaac initially rejected her advances for a long time because it was against professional rules. However, one day Isaac entered the treatment room to find Angel completely naked, and he could not resist her. They began a romantic relationship in the months leading up to Milton's murder. Angel told Isaac that her husband Milton would never allow them to be together, portraying Milton as jealous and controlling. Isaac felt compelled to rescue her. Together, they planned to eliminate her abusive husband Milton. They agreed to stage a home invasion, using a key Angel had placed by the door. During the attack, they intended to be in the bedroom. Late at night, around midnight, Isaac broke into the house carrying a gun. He entered the bedroom and attacked Milton, strangling him until he stopped resisting. During the chaos, Angel attempted to intervene but accidentally hit her head on a nightstand. This unforeseen incident helped make the attack appear real. Isaac then staged the scene to look like a robbery by scattering items across the floor and filling a pillowcase with jewelry before escaping. He planned to remove any DNA evidence connected to Milton, and Angel had a similar plan. Before police arrived, Isaac disposed of all evidence from the attack in garbage cans throughout the city and discarded his phone. This information was provided by the police informant Lewis and required further verification. The investigators persuaded Lewis to record a phone call with Isaac to gather evidence of his confession. Over the course of 3 calls, they confirmed that Isaac had an affair with Angel and was responsible for the attack. Police arrested 38-year-old Isaac Dustin Melcher at his home in North Carolina. He was taken to the station for questioning but refused to cooperate. Consequently, detectives turned their attention to 45-year-old Angel. They informed her that Milton's killer had been arrested and asked her to come to the station to identify him. Upon her arrival, she was also detained and questioned. Angel finally admitted that she knew about Isaac's plan. He intended to eliminate her husband, Milton, who she claimed was destroying their relationship. However, she said that she had tried to stop him. He began behaving aggressively, causing her to fear for her safety and the safety of her children. Therefore, she decided not to intervene in the murder. Police discovered that this story was false and that the two had planned the crime together. In fact, Angel had manipulated Isaac into committing the attack. She positioned herself as a victim while portraying Milton as a cruel tyrant, seeking to evoke pity and noble feelings in Isaac. In the end, he accepted the role of a knight, rescuing her from captivity. Isaac was intelligent and rational, but blinded by love. However, the prosecutor's office faced difficulties because much of the evidence against Angel was circumstantial. During questioning, Angel labeled Isaac a crazed stalker and claimed she wanted nothing to do with him. Detectives revealed her true nature to Isaac, prompting him to realize he had been used. Furious, he agreed to testify against Angel in exchange for a plea deal. Isaac pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 25 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 20 years. The most important condition of the deal was his promise to testify against Angel. During Angel's trial in September 2021, prosecutors argued that she was not motivated by financial gain, as she and Milton had no life insurance policy. Additionally, the house they lived in belonged to Milton and had been purchased before their marriage, meaning it would not be divided or given to her if he died. In her conversations with investigators, Angel revealed that she felt trapped in a loveless marriage. Prosecutors claimed that Angel did not want to be known as a twice-divorced woman and believed that killing Milton was the better option. On September 16, 2021, Isaac testified against Angel. He stated that she first made him fall in love with her, then manipulated him by highlighting Milton's alleged abuse, causing him to hate Milton. Under her manipulation, Isaac was willing to do anything to protect her, but in reality, he was merely a pawn in her hands. Although Angel did not testify during the trial, she maintained her innocence throughout. However, Isaac's testimony ultimately determined her fate. All 12 jurors found Angel Sawyer guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, resulting in a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Milton's antique shop never found a new owner and eventually closed. Currently, both Angel and Isaac remain in prison. Moving on to the next case. The case of Annie Liu. Annie Liu was born on July 3, 1985, in San Jose, California, to Vietnamese immigrant parents, Vivian Van Liu and Hogan Liu. She was their only child and displayed exceptional intelligence and talent from an early age. Annie excelled academically, particularly in chemistry and biology, and was frequently recognized as the top student. Teachers predicted that she would have a successful future in science, even suggesting that she might one day win a Nobel Prize. Annie regularly participated in school scientific conferences, where her work earned numerous awards and prizes. In high school, she won a $65,000 scholarship to attend any university in the United States. She chose the University of Rochester in New York, where she studied cellular development biology and medical anthropology. Annie focused her dissertation on diseases caused by metabolic disorders and devoted significant time to laboratory research. She made important contributions to the treatment of diabetes mellitus and certain forms of cancer. During her time at the University of Rochester, Annie met Jonathan Witowski, a talented student and aspiring scientist specializing in physical and mathematical sciences. Their relationship developed quickly, and their parents were delighted with their children's choice. Annie then pursued a master's degree at the prestigious Yale University while simultaneously working in a scientific laboratory, while Jonathan pursued science at Columbia University in New York. Although they were physically distant, their relationship remained strong through weekend visits and sharing plans for the future. In the summer of 2009, Jonathan proposed to Annie with a diamond ring, and she accepted happily. The couple set their wedding date for Sunday, September 13, 2009. Initially, they only shared the news with their parents, keeping it secret from friends and colleagues. However, on September 6th, just a week before the wedding, Annie sent emails to friends and colleagues announcing their upcoming marriage and including a wedding invitation. The following day, the news became a major topic of discussion in Annie's department and lab. The couple had planned to hold the ceremony on Long Island, followed by a honeymoon at a popular Greek resort. Notably, just before that, Annie wrote an article for a university publication warning students about various dangers and advising them on how to protect themselves. Annie left her university dormitory, where she lived with 3 friends, and headed to her workplace at the University Medical Center's laboratory on Amistad Street. On Tuesday, September 8th, She entered the building around 10 o'clock in the morning using her pass and special key card to gain access. CCTV footage captured her entering the building, and she was seen going directly to her office. There, she changed into work clothes, left her personal belongings behind, and put on a medical coat. She then locked her office door and went to work in the bio lab. However, she never returned to her office or exited the building that day. It appears that she disappeared somewhere within the building's corridors, and no one saw her alive again after that. That evening, Annie's dorm neighbors grew very concerned, sensing that something was wrong because she had not returned or answered her phone. Annie was typically very responsible and punctual, always returning at the same time, but as midnight approached, she was still missing. Her friends decided to report her disappearance to the police. Annie's parents and fiancé had also been unable to reach her that night. They initially thought she might be working late due to a heavy workload and would contact them when free. When the police arrived, they initially assumed that Annie was nervous before the wedding and might have gone somewhere to relieve her stress. However, their opinion changed after examining Annie's office, reviewing CCTV footage, and tracking her movements within the building using her key card. The evidence revealed that Annie had entered the building in the morning but never left. Her personal belongings, including clothes, bag, wallet, and cell phone, remained in the office, yet she had disappeared. Due to the lack of concrete evidence or clues, the Federal Bureau of Investigation became involved. They conducted searches for Annie and interviewed potential suspects. People close to Annie described her as intelligent, kind, cheerful, and energetic, with no known enemies. Annie's family and fiancé waited anxiously for news, hoping she would be found alive. However, detectives were pessimistic. After examining the circumstances, they concluded that Annie was likely no longer alive. The laboratory building was secured and treated as a crime scene. Because access was restricted to staff and students with name badges, the pool of suspects was clearly defined. The atmosphere at the university was tense, as everyone understood that a potential murderer might be among them. Jonathan was questioned by authorities, but he had a solid alibi, having been in another state at the time of the incident. He was extremely worried about the situation and appeared close to a nervous breakdown. One of the teachers, who was also Annie's supervisor, was initially suspected because he had canceled his lectures on the day she vanished and could not immediately provide an alibi. However, after further questioning, his involvement was deemed unlikely. Despite this, police continued to believe the culprit was someone in the Yale University lab, possibly a student, faculty member, or staff. On September 12th, a disturbing clue was discovered in the building, providing the first concrete evidence that Annie had died. A blood-stained medical coat was found hidden under a false ceiling in an auxiliary room. Although the coat did not belong to Annie, tests confirmed that the blood on it was hers. This evidence led authorities to officially declare Annie dead and reclassify the case as a murder investigation. The following day, September 13th, Annie's body was discovered on the technical floor of the laboratory. Tragically, this was the day she was supposed to marry her fiancé and leave for their honeymoon in Greece. Her remains were found in a narrow pipeline within the wall, where she had been forced headfirst. Due to her small stature, less than 150 centimeters tall, hiding her body in this narrow space likely was not difficult for the perpetrator. A service dog trained to detect the scent of decomposition was instrumental in locating her hidden remains. Police observed that the body's placement indicated the killer was familiar with the building's layout, as it was an almost ideal location to conceal the remains. Annie's body showed severe injuries. Most of her ribs were broken, her limbs were damaged, and several teeth were missing. However, according to the forensic report, the cause of death was mechanical asphyxiation. In other words, Annie was brutally beaten and then strangled. Subsequently, her lifeless body was placed in a pipe within the basement wall. Investigators noted the presence of semen traces on Annie's clothing, but further examination revealed that she had not been sexually assaulted. A prime suspect emerged a few days into the investigation. Raymond J. Clark III, a young technician, had drawn police attention. When questioned along with other lab employees, he claimed to have seen Annie leave the building on the evening of her disappearance without her belongings, suggesting she intended to return. However, his testimony raised suspicions. After Annie's body was discovered, Raymond became the prime suspect. Police collected a DNA sample from him and instructed him not to leave the country until the investigation was complete. On September 17th, he was arrested. Autopsy results showed that the semen on Annie's clothing was his, and his coat contained traces of her blood hidden under the ceiling panels. Additionally, Raymond had suspicious bruises, indicating that Annie had attempted to defend herself. Despite the overwhelming evidence, Raymond denied any involvement in the crime. However, further investigation revealed that Raymond was a very hot-tempered individual who frequently had conflicts at work. He engaged in regular verbal altercations with colleagues and was known to be abusive toward women he had known. Raymond's academic record was unimpressive, though he excelled in sports. He had an attractive appearance and was popular among women. Although his low grades prevented him from attending university, his relatives helped him secure a position in a laboratory. Initially, he worked as a janitor but, after a few years, earned a promotion to technician. During this time, Raymond dated Jessica Del Rocco, though their relationship was troubled. Jessica later testified in court that Raymond was controlling and violent. She claimed he would check her phone, read her messages, and dictate what she wore and who she socialized with. If she disagreed with him, he would become physically abusive. After one particularly brutal incident, Jessica fled to another state to escape him, fearing further persecution. Despite this, she never reported him to the police. For the past year, Raymond had been in a romantic relationship with Jennifer Radko, a student at Yale University. Despite rumors of his infidelity with other students, graduate students, and lab employees, Jennifer accepted his marriage proposal and began preparing for their wedding. Although there was ample evidence of Raymond's guilt, his motive for the crime remained unclear. He never revealed it, even after fully admitting his involvement. Initially, it was believed the murder was linked to a workplace conflict. Raymond and Annie had been conducting experiments on lab mice to study the effectiveness of enzymes in treating cancer, diabetes, and other diseases. The mice were under Raymond's care, and he considered the lab his domain. He was a strict rule follower and often came into conflict with co-workers, whom he would report to their superiors. On the day of the murder, Annie stayed late in the laboratory, entering the area where the experimental animals were kept. Raymond, who may have already cleaned the area, also entered. A possible confrontation occurred between them, which eventually led to Annie being strangled in a fit of rage. An alternative theory suggests that Raymond had been trying to court Annie for some time, but she had rejected him. This rejection made Raymond extremely angry, as he was unaccustomed to being refused. When he learned of her upcoming wedding, Raymond became consumed with jealousy. The next day, finding himself alone with her in the laboratory, he attacked her, attempting to rape her before strangling her. This theory could explain the presence of seminal fluid on Annie's clothing, though it has never been conclusively proven. The case attracted widespread attention from the start, as the murder occurred on the campus of a prestigious university and the victim was a graduate student and rising star in the sciences. The investigation was closely followed by the media. Notably, Raymond's ex-girlfriend, Jessica Del Rocco, participated in several interviews, openly discussing her past relationship with him. Raymond's first court appearance was on October 6, 2009, in Connecticut. At this time, he denied any participation in the murder and rejected the charges filed against him. The hearing was delayed multiple times to gather additional evidence and documents pertinent to the case. Investigations showed that Raymond had been in Annie's company in the laboratory for at least an hour, during which Annie was violently murdered. To conceal his crimes, he used his key card more than 50 times across different locations. Ultimately, he reached the technical floor. There, he spent roughly 15 minutes hiding Annie's body within a wall. Shortly afterward, the fire alarm went off, which Raymond himself had triggered. This enabled him to leave the building alongside the other staff members, thereby avoiding police suspicion. Another significant clue was that in the pocket of the coat, found under the false ceiling, lay a green ballpoint pen. This pen was later verified to be the same one Raymond had used to sign various work logs on the day of the incident. Additionally, witnesses saw Raymond carefully scrubbing the lab floor in specific areas over the following days, even though it already appeared clean. Moreover, he discarded all cleaning supplies, as well as a pack of tissues from the table that bore small brown stains resembling blood splatters. These items were later recovered from a trash bin, and forensic testing confirmed that Raymond had made a deliberate attempt to erase any traces of Annie's blood. In February 2011, Raymond accepted a plea agreement with the investigators. In return for a reduced sentence, he he agreed to plead guilty. On March 17, 2011, at the subsequent court hearing, he pleaded guilty to murder and attempted rape. He also expressed remorse and apologized to Annie's parents and fiancé. However, Raymond never revealed the specifics of what occurred on the night of the crime. He also refused to explain his motive for committing the act. Consequently, Raymond J. Clark III was sentenced to 44 years in prison. He is presently serving his sentence at the Cheshire Correctional Institution in New Haven County, Connecticut, with a scheduled release in September 2053. In an interview, Annie's parents and fiancé stated that they consider the sentence just, even though it cannot restore their daughter. The victim's mother, Vivian Van Lowe, delivered an emotional address during the sentencing. With tears in her eyes, she said she would never be able to hug Annie again, hear her laugh, or have grandchildren. Goodbye, Annie, the most precious gift God gave her. Moving on to the next case. Ashley Renee Lyons. Ashley Renee Lyons was born on July 21, 1985. She was the youngest of her parents' 3 children. A native of Scott County, she was a member of the Cedar Grove Baptist Church and a 2003 graduate of Scott County High School, where she was very active in the FFA program. The letters FFA stand for Future Farmers of America, a dynamic youth organization that transforms lives and prepares members for leadership, personal growth, and career success through agricultural education. Ashley's brother, Chris, was just a year older. They had a small car repair shop and grew up fixing not only cars, but also anything with an engine. Ashley loved cars, especially fast ones. But Bobby Gibson, Ashley's best friend, knew that cars were not the only thing she cared about. She was in love with Roger McBeath. The teenagers broke up shortly after prom, but remained close friends. Even after the breakup, Ashley still considered Roger the best. She was thrilled to graduate high school, believing a better life awaited her. However, life for young people does not always go as planned. Ashley discovered she was pregnant, and the father of her child was Roger. She did not hide the news from her family, and they supported her, eagerly anticipating the baby's birth. But January 7, 2004, changed many lives forever. The day began perfectly, but ended tragically. At a doctor's appointment, Ashley learned she was going to have a son. She was overjoyed when she shared the news with her mother, Carol. She even chose a name, wanting to call her son Landon. Ashley could not wait to share the exciting news with everyone. After showing her mom the ultrasound picture, she took a shower, did her makeup and hair, and told her brother Chris and her mom that she was going to Lexington. Looking at the map, Lexington is about 20 miles from Stamping Ground, and Ashley would have arrived in approximately 35 to 40 minutes. She said she planned to meet Roger and his parents at a restaurant there to show them the ultrasound picture. It was a cold evening, with snow expected later. Ashley's mother, Carol, offered to take her car, but Ashley refused, saying she would not be gone long and would return before the snow began. Carol later recalled that the last words she heard from her daughter were, "I love you, Mom. I'll be back soon." Tragically, that night changed the Lyons family forever. After dinner, the phone rang and Chris answered, hearing Roger's voice asking if Ashley was home. Chris replied that she had already left. Roger said he would not be able to meet Ashley, explaining that he had called her, but she did not answer. Chris assumed that Ashley had left her phone in the car and gone to the restaurant. Time passed, but no one could reach Ashley. Her mother called several times, but there was no answer. By 8 p.m., Ashley had still not returned home, despite saying she would not be gone long. Around 9 p.m., Carol called Roger's mother and explained that Ashley had not returned home after the planned restaurant meeting. Roger's mother's response alarmed Carol. She said they had not seen Ashley that day because the meeting had been canceled. Carol was horrified. If Ashley had not been at the restaurant, then where was she? Her daughter was not answering her phone, and Carol had a terrible feeling. Thoughts raced through Carol's mind as she tried to figure out Ashley's whereabouts and whether she was safe. Around 10 p.m., Chris and his father decided they could not simply wait and began searching for Ashley. They knew the restaurant where she had planned to meet Roger and his parents. Upon arrival, they saw no sign of Ashley's car. They searched for hours but could not locate her. At one point, Chris decided to check Scott County Park, knowing Ashley liked the place. She often fed the ducks there and had spent time at the park with Roger when they were dating. Looking at the map, Scott County Park is about 10 miles from Stamping Ground. While driving around the park, Chris and his father spotted a car that looked like Ashley's. The car was running, and the lights were on. As they got closer, they realized it was indeed Ashley's car. It is hard to imagine what thoughts raced through their minds at that moment. Chris ran to the car and saw that the driver's side window was down. Ashley was slumped in the seat with her head down, wearing a seatbelt and completely unresponsive. Chris opened the door and began shaking her, hoping she was merely asleep. Then he looked at his hand and saw blood. He immediately called 911. Tragically, by the time emergency services arrived, Ashley was already dead, and doctors could not save her. Soon after, Ashley's mother received the worst news of her life. She could not believe that her daughter was gone. While her family was consumed by grief, investigators arrived at the crime scene. Since Ashley had died before the ambulance arrived, and it was clear that her death resulted from a criminal act, her body remained in the car while investigators examined the scene for evidence. The first things they noted were that the engine was running, the heater and radio were on, and the driver's side window was down. They quickly determined the cause of death. 3 9mm shell casings were found on the ground next to the car. Ashley had suffered gunshot wounds to the head and neck. Police searched the park but could not locate the firearm used. The fact that Ashley had been shot through the open side window raised suspicions. The chilly night made it unusual that the window was down. Her seating position indicated she was not trying to defend herself or escape. Considering all of this, investigators concluded that Ashley likely knew the person who shot her. It was cold, and the car's heater was on, suggesting she had rolled down the window when someone familiar approached. The shooter had been standing next to the driver's side door. Ashley's purse, wallet, and phone were all still in the car, immediately ruling out robbery as a motive. Inside the vehicle, ultrasound pictures were scattered about, likely what Ashley had been looking at in her final moments. She was 5 months pregnant, so the perpetrator had taken the lives of both Ashley and her unborn son, Landon. Nothing like this had ever occurred in Scott County before, and the community demanded that police find the person responsible for taking 2 lives in such cold blood. Investigators learned from Ashley's parents that she had planned to meet Roger, the father of her child, on the day she died. When they spoke with Roger, he was devastated by the deaths of Ashley and their unborn son. He admitted that he and Ashley had ups and downs in the past, but were no longer a couple when she discovered her pregnancy. Roger was in tears while speaking with investigators, insisting he had no idea who could have committed such a crime. He was brought in for questioning. When asked about the events leading up to Ashley's death, Roger explained that they had planned to meet at a restaurant, but he had to cancel because of other obligations. He wanted to tell Ashley not to come to Lexington, but she did not answer her phone. He called her twice, but she did not pick up. Therefore, Roger called her home and Chris answered the phone. According to Roger, he asked Chris to tell Ashley to call him back when she got home. Roger's account matched what Chris had told the investigators regarding his sister's plans for that evening. When Carol learned that the police had questioned Roger, she did not believe that he could be involved in this crime. Carol said Roger was a nice guy. Their families were on good terms. When Roger had dinner at their house, he always helped clear the table. He got along well with Chris and was often at their home when he and Ashley were in a relationship. So no one believed that Roger could be the one who took the lives of Ashley and Landon. While the investigators were searching for clues about a suspect, Ashley's family tried to figure out who could have done it. Carol found a diary in her daughter's room. In it, she wrote down her experiences. Reading the diary, Carol noticed that one name kept appearing in it, Dina Williams. Dina was the same age as Ashley. They went to school together and rode the school bus together. Ashley felt sorry for Dina because she grew up in a poor family and always wore the same clothes. There were rumors that her parents treated her badly and even beat her, and Dina confirmed them in conversations with her friends. At first, Ashley and Dina were friends, but as it turned out, Dina was jealous of Ashley and wanted to have everything Ashley had, including Roger. In her diary, Ashley wrote that she and Dina had several quarrels. From this diary, Carol learned something she had not known before. She had no idea Ashley and Dina had problems in their relationship. Therefore, Carol started suspecting that Dina Williams had something to do with Ashley's death. After Ashley and Roger broke up, Dina wasted no time and immediately began dating Roger. And perhaps Dina was worried because Ashley got pregnant with Roger's baby. After all, she did not want to share Roger with anyone else. Dina wanted him all to herself. Maybe this could have pushed Dina to do something that cannot be undone. Carol gave Ashley's diary to the investigators so they could analyze everything written there. Carol was sure that the key to solving this case was somewhere in the pages of this diary. When the investigators reviewed Ashley's journal, they also became interested in how she described her relationship with Dina. Thus, Dina Williams was taken to the police station. She denied any involvement in what happened to Ashley. Dina worked at a bank, and according to her, they had an office party on the evening when the crime occurred. So she had an alibi. Dina did not try to hide her attitude towards Ashley from the investigators. She especially did not like the fact that Ashley was pregnant. However, the fact that Dina did not feel anything about Ashley's death was not enough to bring any charges against her. So the investigators let her go home after the conversation. Meanwhile, the results of the ballistic examination came in. The experts analyzed the location of Ashley's wounds, the position in which she was found, and where the casings lay. The angle at which the bullets entered Ashley's body allowed them to determine the approximate height of the shooter. They believed that the perpetrator was about 5 feet and 10 inches tall. Dina Williams' height was around 5 feet and 5 inches, which meant it was unlikely that she was the one who shot Ashley. However, Dina had a twin brother, Thomas Williams, who matched the alleged height of the perpetrator. According to rumors, a few months before Ashley's death, Thomas had asked several people about how to cause a miscarriage. People also said that Thomas did everything his sister asked him to do. The investigators became interested in this and questioned Thomas Williams, but he denied everything, and there was no evidence indicating his involvement in the crime, so he was released. While the police were putting together all the evidence they had to find the culprit, residents wanted to do something to show their support for Ashley's family. They created an improvised memorial with flowers, stuffed toys, and candles. Someone brought 2 crosses, one with Ashley's name and the other with Landon's. While the investigators were looking for new evidence, Ashley's family was preparing for the funeral. It is impossible to imagine what they had to go through because they lost 2 people at once. During the autopsy, the medical examiner removed the fetus from Ashley's body. Ashley and Landon were buried in the same coffin. The fact that the person who committed this crime was still at large made the Lyons family even more devastated. For information that could help arrest the one who took their daughter's life, Ashley's parents put out a $3,000 reward that eventually increased to $5,000. People started calling the police and telling them what they thought might help the investigation. Soon after, they received a call from a woman whose house windows overlooked the park where someone shot Ashley. She reported that she may have seen the perpetrator. Standing at the window, this woman saw someone run out of the park and jump over the fence. Next, the person she saw ran up to a red pickup truck waiting for them with the engine running and got into the passenger seat. Moments later, the truck sped away. According to the witness, it was a red Chevrolet pickup truck. If the person the woman saw really had something to do with Ashley's death, then investigators had to look for not one criminal, but at least 2. After all, whoever was driving the red pickup truck could be an accomplice to the crime. Upon hearing about the red pickup truck, everyone who knew Ashley immediately realized who was behind it. Roger, her ex-boyfriend, the father of her unborn child, had such a car. The police immediately seized Roger's truck. They thoroughly searched it, but found no evidence inside. Roger refused to talk to the investigators, and there was no evidence against him. However, knowing that at least 2 people were involved in the crime, the officers made an obvious conclusion. Who did not like Ashley? Who was unhappy about her pregnancy? Who would be happy if Ashley disappeared? Besides Roger, there was only one person who could wish for this, and that person was Dina Williams. That is why the investigators decided to have another conversation with Dina and her brother Thomas. They questioned Thomas first. During the first conversation with the police, Thomas denied everything, but now, having learned that the eyewitness saw Roger's pickup truck at the crime scene, he became more talkative. When asked if he knew who shot Ashley Lyons, he immediately replied without hesitation that it was Roger McBeath. Thomas Williams eventually made a deal with the investigation to secure a less severe sentence for himself. He confessed that he had given Roger the gun, and Roger was the one who shot Ashley. Thomas also told the investigators that after taking Ashley's life, Roger threw the weapon in Elkhorn Creek. It took a lot of time for the police to find the crime weapon, but the 6-hour dive search was successful. The ballistics examination confirmed that the gun the police found was the weapon of the crime. The The investigators knew that it was not Dina who shot Ashley because she did not match the height of the perpetrator. However, they questioned her again, and she confessed that she was the getaway driver on the evening when Roger committed the crime. The police arrested Roger McBeath, Dina Williams, and her twin brother Thomas. It became clear that Roger did not want Ashley to have the baby. But Ashley was happy. She wanted to become a mother, and her family supported her decision to have this child. So Roger came up with an insidious plan. He invited Ashley to meet him and his parents at a restaurant to lure her to Scott County Park. Dina Williams drove him there, and he walked up to Ashley's car with a gun in his hand. Seeing the father of her unborn child, Ashley rolled down the window and reached into her purse to get the ultrasound pictures. She did not expect him to shoot her. By pulling the trigger 3 times, Roger took the life of both Ashley and his own son. Then he ran out of the park, got into the pickup truck, and told Dina to hit the gas. On the way, they made a stop and got rid of the gun, throwing it into the river. When it became known who was behind this crime, the residents of Stamping Ground were shocked. They did not expect that someone they knew would be capable of such a brutal crime. Equally frightening was the fact that several people were involved in this. Roger McBeath pleaded not guilty. In preparing for the trial of McBeath, the authorities made a mistake, ultimately influencing the verdict. But I will tell you about this at the end of the video. As for Thomas Williams, the court sentenced him to 7 years in prison for his involvement in this crime. In the plea agreement, Williams admitted he accepted $1,000 from Roger McBeath Jr. to injure Ashley Lyons in such a way that it would cause her to miscarry. The act was never carried out, with Williams then agreeing to give McBeath the gun used in the murder, according to court records. In 2005, Dina Williams pleaded guilty. As part of the plea agreement, prosecutors recommended that Williams serve a total of 20 years in prison, making her eligible for parole after she had served 85% or 17 years of her term. During the trial, prosecutors planned to put several witnesses on the stand who claimed Williams said she wished Ashley Lyons was dead, had plotted with McBeath to poison Ashley, and had offered people $1,000 to cause Ashley to miscarry by beating her up, the court documents said. According to prosecutors, Williams and McBeath resorted to more drastic measures after their original plans failed. Williams said her attorney, public defender Rodney Barnes, told her a jury would probably have found her guilty. "I'm hurt and I'm scared because I pleaded guilty to something that I didn't do," she said. Williams acknowledged she took McBeath to the park the night of Ashley's murder so he could view the ultrasound pictures of the couple's unborn son, but said she drove around the Colony subdivision while they met and later came to pick him up. She heard 3 gunshots during her drive, but at the time she did not know what they were, Williams said. "He involved me in the plan without me knowing," Williams said of McBeath. Williams said Roger then called Ashley Lyons on his phone, telling her he loved her and was sorry he had missed meeting her at the park. The jury heard the recording of this message at McBeath's trial. According to Williams, when leaving the park, McBeath never told her that Ashley Lyons was dead, and she never told police about what had happened for fear of what McBeath would do, saying he was abusive toward her. "I was scared to death of that boy," Williams said. "He even threatened to kill me." Williams said she regretted everything that happened and felt terribly for the Lyons family. "I am so sorry," Williams said, crying. "I wish I could go back and change this." However, McBeath's parents, Roger Sr. and Rita, said that Williams was lying, calling her a compulsive liar who often acted in the heat of the moment. The couple said Williams was jealous of Ashley and had agreed to the plea deal to take the easy way out. "She was obsessed with my son," Rita McBeath said. "She was the one who had the motive." When they later got the call that Ashley Lyons was dead, Roger McBeath Sr. said his son was in shock, but Williams was unfazed. "It didn't bother her," he said of Williams. "It didn't bother her a bit." In August 2005, the court sentenced Dina Williams to 20 years in prison. She was released on parole in 2021. In the written motion, Williams said she was very young and easily persuaded by her then-boyfriend McBeath. Williams also said she had no knowledge of the relationship between McBeath and Lyons. Furthermore, Williams said she was not the main offender of the crime and had already served approximately 70% of her sentence for her role in the crime. Williams noted in the court filing that she had completed various programs in prison, including courses on anger management, resident legal aid training, horticulture landscaping, and how to be a certified Braille transcriber. After his arrest, Roger pleaded not guilty to the murder charge. The jury convicted him, but he managed to get his conviction overturned by the Kentucky Supreme Court because a jail informant overstepped his bounds by questioning McBeath in jail about the shooting, and the defense was not allowed to question the informant. John Romano, a jail informant, was instructed by the police not to ask Roger McBeath questions about the crime he was accused of. The informant was allowed to have ordinary conversations with McBeath about everyday things such as sports and movies. The police hoped McBeath would start talking about the crime himself without the leading questions. The Kentucky Supreme Court ruled prosecutors used illegally obtained evidence and overturned the verdict. In 2009, Roger was retried, and this time he pleaded guilty to complicity to commit murder and tampering with physical evidence. The court then handed him a 42-year prison sentence with eligibility for parole in 16 years. The court also sentenced him to 5 years for complicity to evidence tampering, which would run concurrently with his previous sentence. McBeath's parole hearing took place in December. She was my high school sweetheart. She was the mother of my child. She was someone I loved, said McBeath. McBeath told the parole board he was not interested in parole. I'm not here to convince y'all to give me parole. I know I don't deserve it, said McBeath. But I do want to use this time to say that I'm truly sorry for what I did. I want to tell Ashley's family that I'm truly sorry for what I did, and there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about it. McBeath said he did not wish to continue the hearing after declining his parole eligibility. Thus, he is currently still in prison. In honor of Ashley Lyons, Scott County Park, where she died, now has the Angel Garden with ceramic angel statues. After Ashley's death, Carol and her husband, Buford Lyons, helped pass a fetal homicide law at both the state and federal levels. Under the bill, violence against a pregnant woman is considered 2 crimes, one against the woman and the other against her unborn child. Moving on to the next case. Case of Brittany Tavar. Compassion is an important trait that not everyone possesses. It is easy to understand why some individuals are reluctant to help strangers. Today's story demonstrates the possible outcomes of compassion combined with misplaced trust. 45-year-old Brittany Tavar lives far from her family and does not stay in contact with them. She seldom shares her experiences or asks loved ones for advice, nor does she receive much support from them. Many people describe her as someone who is always willing to help. Sadly, this characteristic led her into a tragic situation. After completing school, she dreamed of becoming an actress, so she moved to Hollywood, hoping to follow her dream of a film career. However, she was unable to realize her goal of becoming an actress. Brittany eventually returned to St. Gastine. She chose to work as a real estate staff member, while also taking on part-time work as a photographer. Brittany spent much of her time exploring the city, searching for properties for her clients and taking photographs of architecture. This new direction turned out to be far more successful than her acting ambitions. She gained clients and later worked with many of them repeatedly. Over the years, Brittany built a reputation as a well-known real estate staff member. She earned enough money to purchase a nice home and lived a quiet, peaceful, yet somewhat lonely life. The beach club became like a second home to her, where she enjoyed singing near the beach and spending time with a group of friends. On July 6, 2010, she followed her normal routine and later met up with friends in the evening. Brittany was pleasant and appeared to be enjoying herself. However, she did not plan to stay long and left the gathering around 9:00 p.m. On her way back home, she stopped at a nearby gas station to fill up her car. Over the next 2 days, Brittany's family and friends were unable to get in touch with her. They called and sent messages, but she did not reply. Her friends became very concerned. Brittany was known to be punctual and dependable, so her sudden absence was out of character. While it was possible that she had gone somewhere for work, she always kept her friends informed of her plans. Concerned for her safety, several friends, including her best friend Brenda, went to her house to check on her. At the same time, her family was also worried because she was not answering their calls or texts. When her friends reached Brittany's house, they immediately noticed that her car was not parked in the driveway. From the outside, Brittany's home appeared completely normal. There were no signs of forced entry or anything that suggested a search had taken place. Her friends began knocking on the door, but no one responded. Brittany lived with 2 dogs and 2 cats, and surprisingly, the dogs were gone with her while the cats were still inside the house. It was unthinkable that Brittany would leave her pets alone for such a long time without making arrangements for someone to take care of them. Brittany's friends then contacted her sister to express their concerns. They decided to enter the house to feed the cats and look around further. For convenience, they called a locksmith to help unlock the door. Once inside, the first thing they noticed was the unusual level of cleanliness. Normally, Brittany's home would show some clutter because she lived with animals, but now it was spotless and shining. The air carried a strong scent of cleaning products. The cats were extremely hungry. Brittany's house was unusually cold, and the air conditioning was running at full power, which surprised her friends. She was known to be frugal and would never leave the air conditioning on while she was away. In the end, Brittany's friends were unable to understand the odd details they had observed, so they went to the closest police station to report her as missing. The police were not concerned at first, giving the usual explanations. They said that since she was an adult, she had the right to control her own schedule and was not obligated to tell anyone where she was. Brittany's family, which consists of 3 brothers and 1 sister, hired a private investigator to look into the matter, and they also contacted the police themselves. Several officers went to Brittany's home to help with the investigation. The police carried out a detailed search, but they did not find any helpful evidence. When police examined her personal life, they discovered that Brittany did not seem to have any enemies and had no ties to the criminal world. She was known as kind, respectable, and someone who generally avoided trouble. However, Brittany often talked about her issues with a woman named Anne. At first, their relationship was friendly and close, but over time it became hostile. According to her family, Brittany allowed Anne to stay in her home, which reflected her generous personality, as she frequently helped people who were in need. Witnesses reported that the 2 women argued often and even got into physical fights, resulting in serious conflict between them. Brittany went to court to request a restraining order against, and because she felt threatened by Anne's actions. She believed that her life was at risk and wanted to resolve the conflict through legal means. She collected all the required paperwork and evidence to support her claim. Notably, she disappeared the day before the court hearing was scheduled to begin. This detail was especially confusing to those who knew her, as it seemed unlikely that she would disappear just before such an important proceeding. Brittany had been determined to deal with the situation and had prepared carefully, so it was difficult to accept that she would intentionally miss her own court date. After learning about Brittany and Anne, police suspected that and might have been involved in what happened and wanted to question her to determine what had occurred between her and Brittany. The police quickly summoned Anne for questioning and stated that she was having housing difficulties and that she and Brittany had been friends who supported one another at work. However, things changed when Anne's boyfriend planned a visit from Ireland. He traveled to the United States intending to find employment and live with Anne. At that point, the search for housing began, and contacted Brittany, hoping she could temporarily provide a room for herself and her partner, even though they were essentially strangers to Brittany. At first, Brittany agreed to help her friend, but after living together for some time, she changed her decision. Brittany confided to her friends that the couple was extremely difficult to live with, which caused major tension between the 2 women. Their friendship began to fall apart quickly. The situation eventually escalated into a physical confrontation, which led to Brittany's arrest after and contacted the police. Brittany said that the fight happened because the couple refused to leave her home and that Anne and her boyfriend attacked her, forcing her to defend herself. Brittany spent the night at the police station and received a suspended sentence, along with requirements to attend anger management classes and complete community service. In addition, she was ordered to stay away from Anne and her boyfriend. Unexpectedly, Anne decided to stay close by, and she and her boyfriend joined the beach club serenade, where they deliberately flaunted themselves in front of Brittany. Former friends had turned into adversaries. Brittany accused Anne of behaving in a provocative and hostile manner, stating that Anne was deliberately trying to antagonize her, which prompted Brittany to seek legal protection. To back up her claims of threats from Anne, Brittany began carrying a small video camera to record evidence. The hearing was scheduled for the day after Brittany was last seen at a party. Witnesses confirmed that after leaving the party, she planned to stop at a gas station and then go straight home. Brittany had no intention of going anywhere else. She had not consumed any alcohol and left early to get ready for her court hearing. The hearing was meant to establish a permanent restraining order against Anne, who had been stalking Brittany. Under these circumstances, and had a motive to harm Brittany in order to avoid consequences in court. When questioned by police, and stayed calm and cooperative, but insisted that she had no involvement in Brittany's disappearance. She also provided a strong, verifiable alibi. Police did not immediately rule Ann out as a suspect because they had no other leads. Then a significant breakthrough occurred in Hopkins, South Carolina. 2 dogs belonging to Brittany were discovered wandering through different neighborhoods across the city. The dogs were wearing tags, and when they were scanned at a veterinary clinic, it was revealed that they were from Florida and belonged to Brittany. After examining the dogs, no additional important clues related to the investigation were found. Both dogs were taken to a shelter. The search for Brittany continued. By this point, police had learned that for more than 10 years, Brittany had offered temporary shelter to at least 8 people dealing with housing problems and other life difficulties. She did not charge them rent. Instead, her guests helped with household chores such as cleaning, cooking, and gardening. Sadly, her generosity may have drawn dangerous individuals. The last person she took in was Joseph Dean Roberts, age 26, whom Brittany had met only weeks before she disappeared. They met at a local bookstore, where Brittany realized he needed help. During a brief conversation, Joseph quickly shared his heartbreaking story with Brittany. He said that he had become homeless after losing his job at a nearby gas station. Brittany, known for her compassion, offered him a temporary place to stay in her home so he could get back on his feet. In return, she only asked that he help with household chores. Several of Brittany's friends met Joseph, and she introduced him to them at the beach club serenade. Everyone described him as a humble and agreeable young man who appeared friendly and calm. Joseph shared that he had suffered harsh treatment from his parents since childhood and openly talked about his difficult life. His situation was complicated, which led him to live on the streets, but he was determined to keep going. He viewed Brittany as a true rescuer. She even purchased a computer for him to help him develop his web design skills and offered him assistance with her work. However, as police began investigating him, he started to appear increasingly suspicious. A few days after Brittany went missing, he was stopped for speeding while driving her vehicle in Evanston, Wyoming. After speaking with police, they found no evidence to charge Joseph, so he was released. As officers reviewed the final days of Brittany's life, Joseph's behavior raised further suspicion. As a result, he became the main suspect in her disappearance. His actions and his relationship with Brittany were troubling, which drew police attention for several reasons. Joseph was the last known person to see Brittany alive on the evening of July 6th after she returned from a party. It is believed that Brittany went home after stopping at a gas station. Disturbingly, Joseph used Brittany's car shortly after she went missing. Police started looking into his actions to gather more details. On that same day, he was seen in Olmar, where he purchased several items, including a tent, a black t-shirt, and shorts. This aroused suspicion because Joseph had no money, no employment, and no permanent place to live, making it strange that he could afford new clothing immediately after Brittany's disappearance. Investigators found that the payment method used for some of these purchases was Brittany's bank card. This showed that he had stolen from her. They decided to examine the transactions made with the card more carefully. It soon became clear that after Brittany went missing, he repeatedly used her card across several states. By this time, Joseph had run away, leading police to issue a public warning through the media, cautioning that Joseph might be armed and dangerous. At this stage, everyone was still hopeful that Brittany would be found alive. The search for Joseph took longer than anticipated, creating urgency regarding Brittany's safety. As time went on, the chances of her still being alive diminished. During this period, her family and friends urged police to act swiftly, fearing that any delay could put her life at risk. Eventually, Joseph was arrested for petty theft in Seattle. Police who were focused on locating Brittany were informed of Joseph's arrest and quickly traveled to the city to question him as a possible kidnapper. People continued to hope that Brittany was still alive and being held somewhere. They speculated that Joseph's purchase of a tent could suggest that he had hidden her away from the city. During questioning, Joseph revealed a disturbing truth. He stated that on July 6, 2010, shortly after Brittany returned home from a party, they got into an argument. Brittany insulted Joseph, accusing him of being dirty and smelly, and he claimed she was being extremely rude. This enraged Joseph and caused him to lose control. In a burst of anger, he grabbed a hammer and struck Brittany in the head multiple times. Joseph said that Brittany did not die immediately from her injuries. Instead, she collapsed onto the floor, bleeding and still breathing. Joseph then went into the kitchen, picked up a large knife, and returned to kill Brittany. After committing the murder, he quickly began cleaning the crime scene. He disposed of all the evidence by throwing it into the trash. To clean up the blood, he used cleaning products that were in the house. At first, he considered hiding Brittany's body in the attic, but he was unable to carry her up the stairs. He then wrapped her body in bedsheets. Before sunrise, he placed her body in the trunk of Brittany's car to avoid drawing the neighbors' attention. He then planned to drive far away from the scene of the crime. When police asked Joseph why he removed the dogs from the house and chased them away but left the cats behind, he said that the dogs could attract attention. So Joseph chose to take the dogs with him when he concealed the body. He left the cats behind because they were well-behaved and able to wander freely, so he was not concerned about them. He believed the cats would find food and would not draw attention. After finishing the cleanup, Joseph placed the 2 dogs in the car and drove to Lysistrata, near Highway 95. Once there, he carried Brittany's body into the woods with the intention of burying her. However, Joseph lacked the proper tools and was unable to dig a grave by hand, so he decided to leave Brittany's body on the ground, believing it would soon be consumed by a wild animal. On his way back, Joseph released the 2 dogs along the road. He then returned to Brittany's house and went to sleep. In the morning, he realized that Brittany's family and friends would soon begin searching for her. He decided to flee using her car. He took all the money and valuables from the house, along with her bank card. He had known the card's password for a long time because he had used it many times to purchase groceries. He traveled through several states to avoid the police. Then, when he ran out of money and attempted to steal from someone else, he was caught and arrested. Police then focused their search on locating Brittany's body. Joseph marked the location of the body on a map just a few hundred yards from Highway 95. Her body was later recovered, but it was badly decomposed, making identification impossible. The only way to confirm her identity was through dental records, which later verified that the body was Brittany's. The medical examiner reported severe head trauma caused by a blunt object and a knife wound that injured the neck. When Brittany's family learned what had happened, they were shocked. Joseph, the person Brittany had helped, had murdered her. Friends and family had warned her that helping strangers could be dangerous, but Brittany believed she could avoid harmful people. Tragically, her instincts led to devastating consequences. Not long before Brittany disappeared, she had confided in her friends that Joseph was beginning to irritate her. When she returned home, she found him going through her belongings and noticed that small amounts of money were missing. They argued frequently, and Brittany considered forcing him to leave, but she never had the opportunity. Meanwhile, police investigated Joseph's troubled past. They discovered that he had been dishonest with Brittany. He was actually homeless and had been living in a tent at Brody Beach, Florida. He was skilled at portraying himself as a victim and manipulating others. Brittany had invited him to stay in her home because he appeared to be a kind and honest young man who openly discussed his mental health struggles. However, shortly after moving in, his behavior changed dramatically. He began neglecting his personal hygiene and started using illegal drugs in his room. When Brittany discovered this, she asked him to leave. Instead of leaving, however, he chose to confront Brittany, which ultimately resulted in her death. After Joseph confessed, he was promptly arrested for first-degree murder with aggravating circumstances. Although he claimed to be insane, a mental health evaluation concluded that he was competent to stand trial. This led to a new legal battle, with both the defense and the prosecution presenting strong arguments. Joseph's mental health became a highly contested issue, raising the possibility that he could avoid prison and be sent to a treatment facility instead. As a result, the defense attorney and the prosecutor reached an agreement. Joseph accepted a plea deal, agreeing to plead guilty to the lesser charge of second-degree murder. As a result, Joseph Dean Roberts was sentenced to 30 years in prison. Brittany's family felt the sentence was far too lenient given the severity of the crime, but their attempts to appeal the verdict were unsuccessful. Moving on to the next case. Case of Bert Templett. Anthony Templett spent the majority of his childhood living with his father, Bert Templett, after being separated from his mother, Teresa Thompson, when he was only 5 years old. At that time, he and his mother were living in Texas when a court in Baton Rouge temporarily granted custody of the child to Bert, after Bert accused Teresa of being unfit to parent. Teresa stated that she lacked the financial means to continue the custody battle, so she was forced to accept losing her child. Consequently, Anthony grew up believing the false narrative that his mother was addicted to prohibited substances and neither cared for him nor wished to maintain contact. Teresa later revealed that Bert had previously abused her and had even served jail time for assault. She recounted severe beatings by her husband, including one instance that left her bedridden for an entire week. The abuse occurred so frequently that it became a regular part of her life. Teresa also claimed that a friend of Bert's once confessed he had been hired to kill her, which forced her to leave her family to ensure her safety. During the years Anthony lived with his father, his childhood was far from peaceful. Bert did not allow Anthony to attend school or receive homeschooling. It was not until Anthony was 10 years old that he finally learned to write the alphabet. Bert monitored him constantly through security cameras and a phone application. Additionally, he was forbidden from having friends and was not permitted to visit doctors for regular checkups, leaving him completely isolated. When the family moved to Baton Rouge, Bert remarried a woman named Susan. However, the marriage only lasted until early 2019. When Susan decided to leave Bert and filed for a protective order against him, she accused him of assaulting her so severely that she lost multiple teeth. Bert's aggressive behavior reached its peak on the night of June 3, 2019, when an intoxicated Bert barged into Anthony's room and woke him. They engaged in a heated argument after Bert discovered that Anthony had contacted his stepmother, Susan. Bert became violent and uncontrollable, leaving Anthony terrified. In a panic, Anthony fled to Bert's bedroom, where he found 2 weapons and grabbed them to defend himself. Anthony opened the door and struck Bert, knocking his father backward. Even though Bert begged Anthony to stop, Anthony, overwhelmed by fear and feeling he had no other choice, struck 2 more times. His intention was not to kill his father, but to protect himself. After the incident, Anthony called 911 to report the altercation. In the recorded call, he admitted to striking Bert in the head, but was unsure if his father was dead, explaining that he struck him a total of 3 times. At first glance, the incident appeared to be a brutal murder. However, further investigation revealed a far more complex and disturbing situation tied to years of kidnapping, abuse, and isolation. At the scene, paramedics found Bert lying in a pool of blood in the bathroom of their shared home. He suffered weapon injuries to his arms, chest, and head. Although still alive, Bert was in critical condition and was rushed to the hospital for life-saving treatment. Meanwhile, Anthony was taken to the police station for questioning. When interrogated by detectives, Anthony claimed that his father had abused him and that he acted in self-defense. However, detectives found no cuts, scratches, or bruises on Anthony's body to corroborate his story. After Anthony's arrest, several family members came forward, revealing that he had been reported missing for over a decade. A woman named Natasha, who identified herself as Anthony's sister, stated that he had been kidnapped by Bert from their family home in Texas in 2008. After 11 years of searching, the family finally located Anthony, and the harrowing truth about his life under Bert's control began to emerge. Anthony was initially charged with involuntary manslaughter, while Bert fought for his life. 4 days later, Bert passed away after being removed from life support. As a result, Anthony faced a potential sentence of up to 40 years in prison for manslaughter. Defense attorney Jarrett Ambo took on the case, asserting that the killing was clearly justified. He launched a deeper investigation into Anthony's life, particularly through the accounts of his stepmother, Susan, who provided unwavering support for Anthony throughout the trial. Susan recounted meeting Bert when she was a single mother raising her 6-year-old son, Peyton. She shared that she, Bert, and their children lived together for many years before marrying. However, shortly after their marriage, Bert began frequently yelling at and insulting her, often using his fists or objects such as food plates as weapons. Over time, Bert's abusive behavior escalated, and he began assaulting everyone in the family. To protect her son, Susan decided to send Peyton to live with his biological father. She also disclosed that in early 2019, just 3 months before the tragic incident, Bert's abuse had reached its peak. During one argument, he dragged her out of bed by her hair and punched her in the face 4 times, causing 3 of her teeth to fall to the floor. Finally, in February 2019, Susan filed for a restraining order documenting Bert's history of abuse and noting the presence of several weapons in the house. However, the restraining order did not mention Anthony being abused by Bert. Susan explained that she was afraid to include these details, as doing so could have made the situation even more dangerous for Anthony, who was still living in the house with Bert. After speaking with Susan, Attorney Jarrett concluded that Anthony had truly reached his breaking point. He believed Anthony felt that the only way to escape his situation was to kill his father. Jarrett sought to have the charges against Anthony dismissed, arguing that the act was one of self-defense in an extremely dire situation. Later, Anthony was charged with second-degree murder. If convicted, he faced a life sentence without the possibility of parole. He was transferred from a juvenile facility to the East Baton Rouge Parish Prison, with bail set at $1 million. Attorney Jarrett acknowledged that proving self-defense would be an extraordinarily challenging task. To successfully defend Anthony, he said they would need to prove that Anthony was facing a serious risk, such as serious injury, and that killing was necessary to prevent that threat. He believed it was crucial for the court to understand Anthony's full life story to clarify the reasons and circumstances that led to his actions. With new evidence highlighting Bert's abusive behavior, Anthony's defense team filed for a reduction in his bail to allow his release. A psychologist determined that Anthony was not a danger to others, so his bail was reduced to $50,000 with conditions that included attending counseling, working toward obtaining a GED, and wearing an ankle monitor. After more than 6 months in custody, Anthony was finally released. However, his attorney still needed to demonstrate that Anthony's act of attacking Bert was one of self-defense. Anthony pleaded not guilty to second-degree murder in August 2019. By January 2021, Anthony's lawyer, Jarrett Ambo, reached an agreement with East Baton Rouge District Attorney Hiller Moore and Assistant District Attorney Dana Cummings. Under the agreement, Anthony would avoid prison time. In March 2021, at the age of 18, Anthony agreed to plead guilty to manslaughter and was instead sentenced to 5 years of supervised probation. During this time, he chose not to communicate with any members of his biological or stepfamily. When sentencing Anthony to probation, the Assistant District Attorney for East Baton Rouge Parish stated that prison time would serve no purpose for this young man, as he had already endured immense pain and hardship throughout his life. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed exploring these intriguing cold cases with me. If you found the video fascinating, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Cold Case Mystique for more deep dives into cold case investigations. Your support helps me bring you more compelling content. Leave a comment below with your thoughts or any cases you'd like me to cover next. See you in the next video. And remember, the search for truth never stops.